Hello folks. Okay, in my last video, we learned how to create variables in Angular, and also we learned what is the difference between a one-way binding and two-way binding. For example, in this example we built last video, when I type, look at that, it's keep printing because this is two-way binding. And if you didn't get a chance to see that video, I highly recommend please watch the video to understand how to define variables in Angular, how to use variables in the HTML, and how to use the single binding and two-way binding. Look at that. So in this video, we are going to learn how to use ngIf. What it mean ngIf is it's like a usual if condition. How do we usually you've seen that using the if conditions in the any language like JavaScript and Java and any other language. But how do we use if conditions in the HTML? So that's what we call it ngIf. This video I'm going to explain how to use ngIf in HTML. Okay, so basically this is normal, pretty much straightforward. It's if condition, which means that if condition is true, do this. If false, do this. Usual thing. Let's take an example here. I have a image, and I have a div header. I have a label. So in HTML, if I want to if I want to show specific tag or component when there is a condition is satisfied. For example, you show something in, let's say, real-time example of the login. When customer trying to log in and after login, you have to show something. If not logged in, you have to show something. Just so how do you kind of do that? So you don't need to write like explicit JavaScript to do all the if condition, because if you don't have Angular, you need to write all the if conditions in JavaScript. You have to write explicitly do all the conditions. Whereas in Angular, it's really straightforward and easy. Okay, let's take example. Let's take one thing. So I have this is a small HTML. This is HTML, and you see the output here. So what we have is, so we have a div. Under the div we have a defined the variable. It's a variable data coming from this one, and I have an image. Let's say I don't want to show the image tag in the page. Okay, let's say, let me write this. So what is the syntax for ngIf is star ngIf. Let's say this tag will be shown in the HTML page only if the if condition is satisfied. So there are two ways you can write that. So let's say true. So boolean value. Let me save that. You see here it, but okay, let me just do false. Very simple. You don't see this image because you set the ngIf as a false. It's a boolean. So what would happen is the Angular will not display the whole tag because of ngIf is false. You can either directly give the true false, or you can use double quotes and you can use false. Either way it will work. Let me try true. Okay, now you got the image. So this is really straightforward. Otherwise in HTML you have to explicitly call JavaScript, and you need to perform action. You have to write additional code. So okay, now this is very simple code. So now how do we use ngIf if the variables? Okay, let's define a variable. In my last video we seen how to define the variable. Let me define a variable called login. I say false. Let me save that. It says no, not initialized. Let's say I have it boolean. let's say false, we can directly use it. Let's say false. You know why you get this error? Because you're trying to assign the value, not the data type. So if you want to assign the data type, you have to use colon. But if you want to assign the value, you need to use equal. So now I set the value. This is basically boolean, either true or false. So what I'm trying to do is, instead hard coding the value in the HTML, I'm trying to use a variable, so that in the programming language you can manipulate the variable and show the HTML. So now the task is, when the variable is set as true, you have to show the image. When the variable is set as false, you don't need to show the image. Let's see how to do that. It's very simple and again straightforward. If you go to the HTML and just go to the page you created, it's a if condition. So this is hard coded. Instead of hard coded, let me add the variable. Okay, now you see it's gone because the variable you set as false, let me set as true. Look at that. When I set as a true, you get the image. So this is really fantastic, because it's very simple and you can just simply give the value, it will reflect. You don't need to call usually what we do in HTML, when something happened, just you need to write the on loading, on changing, there are function, then that function has to call JavaScript, then that function has to write explicit code to perform the action or anything here. But here it's really straightforward. Angular given us a nice ngIf tag. Okay, so we already seen there are two way you can give that variable. You can just straightforward, you can assign the value and just give the variable. And let's see other example. um, let's say I need to write, let me write a simple div, and in this div what I'm going to do is, I'm going to basically define a variable, let's say logged in. Okay, and star ng if equal to logged in. So now I'm going to define else. So usually this one you've seen that, okay, so if it is true, you show this tag. If it is a false, don't show the tag. What if I have some sort of condition like, okay, if it is true, show this particular tags. If it is false, if you can have to have some if else in the tag itself. Let's see how we can write that. Okay, and now let's see else show the um, logged out, something like that. Okay, I will explain how it works, but let me define that, because now you get the error because you don't have logged out. Angular not able to identify what is logged out. Let me create a ng template. Okay, the ng template, I'm gonna write small div. Hello, this is ng template. Okay, so now, so you may get confused what we're trying to do here. Let me explain. So now what we're trying to do is show this tag if the logged in is true, else show this tag. So basically this conditions, this tag will be shown, this template, only when the logged in is false. Let me just do one thing. Let me define this block. Hello, this is div logged in is true. Let me save that. Look at that. So now if you look at the result, you see hello, this is div, not div, this is div, sorry, div logged in is true, which means that Now the Angular executes only this portion and do not execute this portion because the logged in is true and it's not going to else, because the logged in, what's the value in logged in? So we define the logged in value is true, so it's always set the true, so it will execute the current directory and it will not execute this one. Let's say one thing, let's change the value to false. Let's see how it reacts. Okay, so now if you look at that, so you don't have this value coming in anymore, because now it's look at the value of logged in is false, so it get failed, this tag is not executed, and it goes to else, and else is logged out, so it gets executing this logged out tag. So you see, hello, this is ng template. So now your ng template is shown. So this way you can define your ngIf based on your requirement. So you can also define, so and also you've seen what is ng template. So just think of ng template is a piece of block where it get executed only when this condition is satisfied. You can put any HTML tags here, and it will get executed, the whole entire block get executed when this condition satisfied. I hope now you understand what is how to use ngIf, and what is the purpose of ngIf, and how to define what is the syntax. So now you see the syntax is, if you want to use only for this tag, specific tags, this is the syntax star ngIf. But if you want to use ngIf with the else condition, this is the syntax. You can say variable semicolon else, the else template. So if you don't have this template, the Angular will throw error. Let's see that. So Angular is trying to find this template, but it's not there, so it throws error. So you have to make sure that you given the template. And what is if I want to have template, two templates? The reason, so one thing you realize now is Angular in default will not execute the template, right? Because Angular comes here, it checks this condition and execute only if this particular condition is triggered from here, the else condition satisfied. Let's say, let me just do one more example, you will understand clearly. Let me ng template let me save that. If you look at clearly, you don't get this value, you don't get this ng template printed here, because in default Angular do not recognize this ng template unless you call it explicitly, or you have to define in ngIf differently. Because you see here, this is in default the div is recognized, and also it verified the if condition, whereas the ng template not recognized and you don't see the values coming here. So if you want to recognize your template, you have to use this this kind of else, or you have other ways, you have to define if in a different way. Let's say, let me define this way. You have other way, you can define the ngIf sorry, no star, so open bracket close, let's say true. Let's say, look at that now. So this is default ng template. You understand now, correct? Because now it started to recognize the ng template. Now the value is coming. But if you don't have this, it won't recognize. Or even if you have this one, it won't recognize. Look at that. You don't have that ng template. This is default ng template in here, even though you have true conditions. So whenever you have ng template and you want to get recognized, you need to use this open close bracket, so it will recognize. So these are the way you can define the ngIf in Angular. I hope now you learned how to use ngIf in Angular. This is really simple and straightforward, but little tricky. You need to understand how to use that. But once you started using it, it will be very useful. You don't need to write many conditions. Even it supports many different else if conditions. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please like my YouTube video and please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.